The Soul Sovereignty podcast is a deep dive into the core wounds and deeply embedded subconscious beliefs that reside within the collective psyche so that you can reclaim your sovereignty and embody your power to experience freedom in your relationships. It is hosted by Jessica Falcon, International Soul Embodiment Guide and Relationship Coach. Visit thepathtosovereignty.com to enter a portal of transformation.
Women and money is a topic I'm excited to dive into today on the Soul Sovereignty podcast with myself, Jessica Falcon, and special return guest, Sara Stansberry. We had a conversation on the podcast about the fear of being alone and how that can create basically codependent dynamics and relationships. And then throughout that conversation, so go listen if you haven't already, money kept coming up as a topic. And it's a topic that both Sara and I are passionate about, helping women unravel themselves from a lot of the programming and conditioning and beliefs around how money affects our choices in relationship, and also how our fears and beliefs can prohibit us from even asking questions about money, understanding our own financial situation, especially if the other person is the primary, quote, breadwinner. Mm-hmm. And I think this will be a really interesting conversation because my perspective is based on a lot of religious history and ancient mythology and understanding women's lack of direct relationship with money for millennia, because for millennia, women weren't even allowed to earn money, hold property. And that started right around the time money was actually being developed as a system of exchange, which was around 2100 BC. So we're talking about a little over 4,000 years ago is when we developed money as a currency. Not money as a coin. It was actually originally called a shekel. And a shekel was essentially a weight of measurement, and it was silver or grain. Started as grain. So the very first profession in the world is not prostitution. It was farming. I get really passionate about this. It was actually farming. Prostitution started much later after the rights of women were taken away. Different conversation. So then it wasn't until 600 BC in the country of Turkey that they developed coinage, which Greece then popularized around 500 BC. And then we've been using coins and then now dollars or euros and other paper forms of currency ever since. And part of why this is important is because women in particular carry forward this separation from money in their subconscious and what I would call their energy body from past, present, future lives, and also from the ways that has been passed down from generation to generation for millennia, because it wasn't until the 1890s in the West. There are still other countries that took many, a lot longer or still deny women direct access to money. But in the West, the 1890s, that women could actually own property again. Because until that point, women were considered property. So how can you own property when you are property, right? The legal justification. And it wasn't until later in many states in the United States that women could actually open a bank account under their own name. Yep. So we can't just expect this thousands of years of belief systems and programming, not to mention the way that shows up in our emotions and our subconscious, to disappear. And then suddenly we're financially liberated and suddenly we can make our own financial choices and not ask permission and seek validation and feel fear around money. Yeah. And so I want us to start this conversation with something we brought up when we were chatting beforehand around, there is a difference, however, that we should highlight between being codependent on somebody because they are the quote primary breadwinner, and knowing that that's an agreement that two people have made. And I want us to then dive into whether it's a conscious agreement or more of a codependent expectation, how that role affects relationships and the ability to make financial choices for oneself, and how this shows up. And I'd love for us to start there and then see where the conversation intuitively goes after that. And our intention is for you as the listener to gain some more resources and tools for your own relationship with money, specifically in the context of another relationship, so that you can show up with more freedom and confidence and trust in yourself and heal the wounds that may be stopping you from even asking for what you want.
Yeah.
Oh,
Excellent history. Thank you so much, because I just loved the framing that you just gave, and the history and the work that you've done, right, around this is fascinating. It's an honor to be here again, Jessica. So thank you. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
to have you. So I'd love for you to start, on this codependency versus a conscious agreement, when one person is maybe bringing in all or some of the income and the other person feels dependent. There may not be codependent, there's a difference, but it's dependent as a result. Let's just talk about this dynamic a little bit, because even though we do have the capacity as women to earn our own direct income, there may be situations when we still choose to raise kids as a form of work, or choose to not work outside of the home, or situations when you are just financially reliant on the other person.
Yeah.
And
I mean, oh, sorry. Yeah.
no, just how that really affects us. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, there's so much there. And one thing that I want to bring up before we kind of get into the meat of it was kind of something that you brought up in the introduction, is that it's really only been in recent times that women, even in the West, have had the ability, or and not to say that no woman had an ability, but that the ability was easier to be financially independent. In my parents' age, I mean, you talk about in the 1890s, women could own property, but it was just recently that, like, I remember my mom telling me the story of, and she's in her 80s, where she divorced my dad and she couldn't get a credit card. She was a single woman. She had a job. She couldn't get it, and she was able to get a credit card, I think, through some means of a family friend or what have you, but who like worked at the bank or something. But it wasn't really standard practice to be able to extend credit to a single woman. And that wasn't very long ago. That was just one generation ago.
And still it is harder, can still be harder for a lot of women to get a loan in their own name.
Well, it can be harder because of the wage gap, right? And even though, I think about, again, my mother's generation, and you could go to college, but you could be a teacher, or you could be a nurse. I mean, there weren't a lot of career opportunities for women to make as much money as men. And so you've got kind of a wage disparity just out of the gate, even if you chose to work from the time you were 16 to the time that you retired, even if there was steady income, even if there was progression, the earnings were still reduced based to their male counterparts. And so the idea of this financial sovereignty, financial independence, has only become available to let's say, the majority of women in relatively recent times, so to speak. And I think we mentioned the reason that this kind of came up and we're doing this podcast now is on the last one that we did together. It kind of came up that, I'm working a little bit. I work with women who are a little bit older than me. And then I also kind of have experience with women who are coming in from their 20s, 30s, like, so a little bit younger than me. And I look at my young adult daughters, right? And their ideas around money are so different than my ideas around money are or were. And I do think that we're kind of in a transition here, which in a good way, of it kind of being the norm culturally that women earn money, that they bring money to the equation in their relationships, that they have opportunity that maybe the generation before them didn't have. And I love that. But then as a 55-year-old, sometimes, you know, people will ask me, well, like, how come you didn't prepare for that? Or how come you didn't know about this or do it this way or do it that way? And I'm thinking, well, that's not how we were thinking when I was in my 20s or 30s. That's we just weren't there as a society. And so I think you have a lot of us who are in this kind of in between place in terms of where the culture is in terms of their attitudes and beliefs around money. So I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and we have to remember that even when women have money in their own hands coming directly to them, or feel like they're financially independent and therefore don't need a relationship, we still have all of this subconscious programming from the collective and on a karmic level, if you believe in past lives. We still have all this, not to mention generational, what you were taught by your mom, by your family, by what you saw, that affects our choices and affects our behavior. I know we can consciously think one thing, but that doesn't mean that's how we feel around money or how we actually show up and respond. And so I know that one of the things we want to talk about is this difference between, okay, consciously, yeah, you could say, I know I'm equal, I have my own money now, but are you still showing up as an equal? Are you actually showing up that way? Are you actually feeling confident saying, hey, partner, let me see your financial records too? Or before we get married, let's both be really clear about all of our financial assets and all of our financial debt, and posing the questions and not being afraid and not feeling like you're being too nosy or you're asking for too much, and the ways that these subconscious beliefs can come out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, in my opinion, it all kind of stems from a worthiness issue, like the way that we think about money, and also the value. So when I think about, so I think some of our previous conversations, Jessica, I have a lot of clients come to me. I've had a lot of people that I work with are kind of dabbling in this idea of it becoming emotionally sober, like from codependency and things like that. So I'm working with them doing that. And I get questions sometimes that are like, my sister lives with her partner and depends on him to pay the rent, and she's so codependent. Like, that's like the statement that's kind of thrown out there. And I'm like, well, maybe or maybe not, right? So it's really when you think about money in a relationship, and it really depends on the communication that you have with your partner. And also, like you said, depends on the value and the worth and the power that you're actually sitting in when you're having these conversations, right? So, I have to explain to this woman, like, maybe or maybe not with your sister, because if she's had a mutually honoring conversation with her partner about, like, this is the way we're going to divide things up. You're going to pay for the rent and I'm going to pay for this and that, and they've made this decision collectively. That's not codependence. That's just a healthy interdependent relationship. It just happens to have a financial component as a part of it. Now, if that person has not had a conversation, and there's just an expectation that the rent's going to be paid by the other partner, and there's resentment and things not being said and things not being understood, and it's not clear, then yes, that can be like a sign of financial codependency, so to speak. So, money is power, right? It's got some, and when I say like power, I don't mean it kind of in a sense of the way we think about it, like it can push things around or manipulate things, which it can do. But a lot of times women give their power away um, in their financial life, meaning whatever they've decided, how they have decided to live with their husbands, partners, what have you. Um, and especially maybe if they're not working, if they're not contributing to the household in a financial way, they feel like they don't have a right to understand what bank accounts they have, or where the finances are, or where the debt is, where the income is, where the investments are. There are some women I work with who are divorcing and have never used their checking account. Like they just, their husband gives them cash, literally, and that's what they have to spend. And then it comes time to dissolve the relationship and they have no idea what they even have. And so I think that it's important as women, especially if, that we understand like where the finances are, how much is in the accounts, where the accounts are, a list of the accounts, with the passwords to the accounts, all of those things that essentially give us power, because it's not, I don't mean power over your partner. I mean, um, equal footing in the financial realm of their lives, essentially.
Absolutely. And when you don't ever ask the questions, it's because you're in a reliant position and you're feeling powerless because you're not the one earning the money, quote unquote.
That can happen.
And that's very common. It's often one of the main reasons people don't ask. Well, he's got it covered. He's doing it. It's none of my business as long as things are taken care of. But I have to address, before we dive into this a little deeper, the question around money and power, or not the question, just the topic, because men and women give their power over to money and say, money has power over me. I will do this if I have enough money. I will do that when I will let money decide if I can follow my soul. I will let money decide if I can X, Y, Z. All of that's giving your power over to money. It makes money a god, essentially. And a lot of financial sovereignty work is reclaiming your power back so that you are the one deciding, you are the one in power. You are anchoring into what I would call God-sourced money, or divine flow. And that's an energetic process that requires a lot of inner work and subconscious reprogramming. And also, the way we have historically defined power is something that has authority or influence over another. So money in our society, unfortunately, has been deemed a god by many, and many people give it authority or influence over them, their decisions, well-being, their health, their relationships. And when we become our own authority, which I would call part of sovereignty, and we start developing a new relationship with money that is no longer based on hierarchy, money as a tool versus having authority over me, money as a value system that we use money to decide where we are putting our energy and where we're not putting our energy, and get out of survival mode and fear mode, which is the only way that other people can maintain control over us, is when we're in survival or fear mode. Come out of that, do the inner work to come into sovereignty, into what I would call your God self, your soul self. And I know I'm speaking on very broad terms for the sake of this conversation, and come back into that inner empowerment. Then we start looking at the ways we do that in relationship, because typically the same way we're giving authority or power to money is the same way we're giving authority or power to, say, a partner. And we see them as having authority because they're the one with money. So then what happens, and subconsciously, well, because you're the one with money, I have to do what you want me to, or I won't have money, or I won't survive. My needs won't be met. And that does create codependency. And so we have to be clear that there can be that interdependent, both people consciously choose, we're going to enter into this arrangement. I've been in that. And we consciously are in this arrangement. You're going to provide this. I want to provide this. Maybe it's not exactly equal, but that's based on levels of income. And you can do that in a very healthy way if both people are not using money as a way to have power or authority over.
That's right.
Only if both people are doing that. Because if one person is saying, okay, so then I still have to seek your permission and validation and agreement to do anything I want to do. Or if the other person is using that, well, I don't really like this truth you're speaking. You know what? I'm not going to give you that cash this week. You're not going to go on that trip you want to go on. It very quickly becomes codependent and entangled.
It can become a slippery slope very easily. If you're right, if the two people are not in agreement with how the money is going to be used. And Jessica, so much of what you're talking about is a lot of what my work centers around, which is worthiness. And what I find is that a lot of women struggle to ask the hard questions about account balances, about debt balances, about where the money is, how the money is used, because they don't feel like they have a right to. Because, like you said, somewhere it may be conscious, it's probably not. They feel inferior in the relationship in some way, shape, or form. And that could be for a variety of reasons too. It doesn't necessarily mean that they feel inferior because they're not bringing in money into the relationship or not as much money into the relationship. It really could be because like worthiness is a whole person issue, not just one thing. So anywhere in your psyche, basically, where you're feeling unworthiness, it can show up in your financial life. Because you may feel unworthy to get the information, to feel like you need to get the information. You may feel like, oh, I'm bugging that person, I'm bugging my partner. I don't really need to know. But I think in your heart of hearts, you know that you do need to know, right? I mean, because it's a responsibility too. It's part of being a healthy adult, is understanding where your money is, basically. And, I really, I just love what you said about the power issue. And it's not like power and authority. It's really about maintaining your personal power in the relationship is by asking the hard questions, or they're not even hard questions, right? But really, and this is where you can slip up, but also there's such an opportunity because, like you said, having both parties on the same page and equal footing, because like money isn't arbitrary. It's well defined. It's a well-defined entity. And so it's easy to understand where it is by the amount, or, what have you, and like what's going to what. It's math, right? So whereas sometimes things that are simply emotional, like personal integrity, or, oh, well, I like communication differences, things like that, where you're in a partnership where you may have conflict or potential conflict, can be resolved by people kind of understanding one another a little bit more, and more communication. And you work on it here, you work on it there. Money's arbitrary. It's like you're either going to use it or not. You're going to have it or not. You're going to share the accounts or you're not. It's hard to look away when it becomes obvious that you're not on equal footing.
And I think those conversations with a potential partner or partner around money help you learn so much about those unconscious power dynamics between both of you, help you understand their value system, your value system, help you understand how much they're wanting to give, provide, and support, how much you're wanting to give, provide, and support, what the dynamics are in the relationship, the communication, because money is just, conversations around money just highlight the underlying dynamics that are already there. And often, I know in my experience, one time I had a partner who refused to answer my questions about money, or got super defensive and would not disclose or provide. And this is at a time when we were talking about moving in together. And it made me very skeptical. Like, what are you hiding? And you know, I've also heard some women say that, well, you know, he says, just trust me. It's almost like you should just trust me. And if you don't take my word for it, you're questioning me, my integrity, which is not true. It shows you that person's capacity to be honest, to be vulnerable, to be forthright, to be clear, to not hide, to disclose, to want to give to you or not. And when somebody isn't willing to be forthright, one, it could be too early in the relationship, and maybe you're not at a point where you're moving in or getting married and you're not ready to have those conversations yet. It could be that they really don't want you to be financially dependent, and so they don't want to provide you anything because they don't want it to be that kind of dynamic. It could be that they're hiding something and they do have a lot of debt and they do have a lot of issues. And until you have the conversation to find out what's really going on, and if they're not willing to, bingo, there's the information you need to decide if they are a partner you want to be with.
That's right. That's right. But then it goes back to our previous conversation of what are you willing to sacrifice so that you're not going to be alone?
Exactly.
Right. And so let's say, like in your situation, you have somebody that you care about, he was a partner or what have you, and did not want to disclose. At that point, you know, you have to make an active decision. Okay. Maybe everything else in the relationship is everything you've ever wanted, you know, maybe, you know, on the surface, everything you're like, wow, but he does this or he does that. And I mean, he meets my other needs, you know, so well. However, you know, finances and money they're part of life. And it does show you a lot about where a person is in the relationship, how they feel about you in the relationship with what, you know, and how equal they feel that you are in the relationship. To be able to have, you know, transparency and honesty about these things.
And it all comes down to your own boundary, right? Because relationships, ideally, when they're not codependent, when they're not based on subconscious, like karmic patterns, they're based on conscious choice. And so a boundary is simply a choice. A boundary is saying, okay, you're not going to disclose this to me. My boundary is we don't move in together until I see your finances and your bank accounts. Or that's a boundary. And it's just a boundary, pure, neutral, and simple. And understanding where you both are and respect to that provides so much information. Money is just energy. We give it so much fucking power. Excuse me. We give it so much power. It is just energy. It is just energy. Unfortunately, it has been used as a tool of control. It has been weaponized. It's not money itself. Money is neutral. Everything is neutral. It's the consciousness of people who have used it and weaponized it. That's it. We have the opportunity to shift our consciousness around it and how we show up. And so it really comes back down to choice. What is an inner alignment? What is your choice? What are you choosing about this relationship? What are you choosing? How are you choosing to direct your own money? And that's it. And so when we take away all of that and we just see how this person talks about money or is not willing to talk about money, is showing me this person. Take the money, actual dollars out of it. Showing you that person, who they are, their value, their integrity or lack thereof, their trustworthiness or lack thereof, their ability to open up to you, to communicate, their vulnerability. It's showing you who they are, regardless of what the outcome is.
That's right.
then it comes down to, particularly as women, are you willing to even receive? And are you willing to receive without expectation, unspoken? Are you willing to receive without demand? Are you willing to receive without giving them authority over you? Are you willing to receive? Period. Because what often happens is the unconscious guilt when somebody does want to give you money or does want to be the primary breadwinner, then you feel guilty that you're receiving, guilty, I should be doing more, then I have to do more, then I feel obligated, then I can't say no, then I should be, and then blah, blah, blah. And then that ends the choice and it ends the freedom and it ultimately ends the healthy, happy relationship too.
That's right. Well, and because it really is a worthiness issue.
And guilt can be separate from worthiness, though. I mean, it's connected.
No, true.
Connected. But that feeling of guilt is its own wound. That guilt is heavy. Guilt is feeling like a burden. Guilt is feeling like, and yes, it's very connected to worthiness and it's connected to fear. All of these, I call them the 6 major wounds, all connect to each other, and they feel differently and they show up differently too. And that guilt from receiving, I think so many women have it. It's like, oh, you've given to me, so I have to give you XYZ in exchange. I have to do this, versus feeling free to still be in their own choice, free to still speak their own truth, even if they're receiving, say, money from another. There's often this unspoken, well, you've given me this, so I have to do what you want me to. And that actually is a deep, what I call prostitution wound, even though wives and prostitutes both had to give sex in exchange for money for thousands of years. There was literally no way around that. You were either a wife forced to have sex, or you were a prostitute forced to have sex for money. Most women still have that in their system, that I have to give sex for money. I have to give sex to be safe. I have to give sex to be loved. I have to give sex for X, Y, Z. And it's so deeply embedded in the nervous system, not to mention the subconscious and how we show up, that I see that deeply in a lot of clients, even in men, the expectation. And so we have to see how we can release the guilt and come back into empowerment that is less about an exchange and more about each person being in choice, which comes from, like, then it creates more overflow in the relationship and freedom in the relationship. But again, both people have to do that, because if you are coming into your power and your choice and your boundary and your voice and your truth, but the other person still wants to use money to control you, and the other person still thinks you should be giving them what they want because they're giving to you, it's still not going to create a healthy dynamic unless they're willing to look at that too.
Well, yes, for sure. I mean, when you think about guilt, right? Guilt is, I did something wrong, basically. And so, if I received, I did something wrong, would be the complete sentence in the psyche.
Guilt is, I think we can look at guilt in different ways. That's definitely one main way, but guilt can also be feeling like, not just I've done something wrong, but I am taking up too much space. I'm receiving too much. I feel obligated. I feel it's a weight, it's a burden, it's a heavy, I shouldn't be, I should. It's the shoulds are often related to guilt.
But isn't really that because you feel like you're doing something wrong? If I take up space, I'm doing something wrong. If I assert my needs, I'm doing something wrong.
I don't necessarily know the way. I think it really depends. And I see it as so multi-layered because I've traced thousands and thousands of beliefs over 10 years. And so I don't see everything as always coming to the same root. But I do think that sometimes, yes, and other times it's really more to these deeply embedded survival mechanisms from millennia of programming. That actually is really rooted in, you give me this, I have to give you that, or my life is literally at stake.
It's a safety and security issue.
More of a safety.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
survival mechanism, especially around sex and money, especially around that.
It's a fascinating, you're a wife or a prostitute. It's fascinating. I hadn't even, had not applied that logic to it, but I definitely see what you're saying. And that's worth some deeper exploration for sure on my end.
Book, so stay tuned for the book.
Okay, I'm so excited. I am so excited to read that. I mean, I think you're right. And I think, I wrote down here in my notes, like value, right? So you've got the worthiness issue, you've got the value issue. As women, am I of value? And how do I provide value in this relationship? Is the only thing that I bring to this relationship the sex I can provide? Is that where my value lies? Is it the care of the home, the care of the children, whatever? Is that where my value lies? And, for a long time, I really felt like, my value, I had to earn my place, right, in my relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had to perform in order to feel valuable.
And to prove you're not a burden. It's like, look, see what I'm doing for you. See what I'm giving to you. I'm not a burden. There's a reason you're giving me. There's a reason you're supporting me. And it's so unconscious sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
And especially because often, historically, when women were the ones staying at home and men were the ones going to work, it was a system established by men, by the way. So they can't blame anybody for that. They're the ones who created that as a law. And
well, I think it worked out for them.
In some ways, yes. Though in some ways would say no. So it's right. It goes both ways. Okay. But yes, in many ways it did. And also men suffer from financial pressure big time. I've worked with many men who have a really hard time with the amount of pressure that women put on their value being tied to how much money they bring home. And it's connected to their sense of worthiness and power. And so we have all collectively created these deep wounds. We've all collectively created them, men and women. And we forget how much men are wounded by this same system. Even though maybe they're the ones who created it, they are very wounded by this too. Mm-hmm. Because if they knew their true value, they would not be denying the value of women. Right. Part of it is that we really have to look at, these power dynamics, but also the ways we cannot assess value through a linear format. Like we can look at the value, say the man would bring. You're bringing home X amount each month. This is the value you're bringing to our home. Well, the woman can't measure how much love, how much life force, how much time she spends cooking, nourishing meals and the grocery and the kids and the attentiveness, the emotions. We can't measure those things, but we can't then compare the value. So because we can see one, and the physical eye see it, the logical mind says, well, you're providing more value than she is because we can't quantify her value. And in fact, it's because it's limitless value. It is permanent.
It's priceless.
Value.
Yes.
That's the word. But it's priceless. Yeah. We can't measure it. And so just like with all, quote, invisible forms of, I would say, the feminine, we tend to deny it because we can't see it. We can't see love. So let's just push that as like second to money. We can't see the value of life force and passion and nourishment and kindness. And so let's just value these other things that we can check the boxes on because we know there's a value from this we can quantify and measure. And the reality is that this is kind of what we're talking about in my online temple of divine feminine power this month. So I get really passionate about this around the value that so many aspects of feminine power bring that are invisible, but can only be felt. And yet life without them is worthless. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Like what life without love? What's the point?
What is the point?
Zero interest of life without love. Zero interest.
Mhm.
And by that, I even just mean the love within my own heart, the love of God, source, goddess within me. I have zero interest of living a life without this connection. I have zero interest of living a life without this knowledge and awareness.
And I mean, most people don't want to live a life where they come home to an empty apartment either, or they come home to yeah, even a loveless relationship, right? Nobody really wants to live.
Food.
Yeah.
Never breathe fresh air.
Yeah.
Never watch the moon. Can we even quantify those things? No.
Never have any connection, real connection with truly, happy and fulfilled individuals. Like nobody wants to live a life free of those things.
Mm-hmm. And it's women owning this value. It's women
Mhm.
beginning to own. I can't quantify my value, but you tell me what your life would be like if I didn't do X, Y, and Z, if I wasn't here. And then you tell me I don't provide value to this relationship. Have that conversation if that's an issue. Truly.
For sure. And have the conversation. I would encourage, women listening to this to have the conversation. Like we talked last time, like say what you mean, but don't say it mean. Like don't be nasty about it. But at the same time, when you talked about boundaries earlier, right? And so when you know your value, you know your worth, and you're standing in your power, your boundaries work.
Yes.
When you're not doing those things, your boundaries don't really work. They're very shape shifty, so to speak. And so, during doing your internal work and understanding that where you're bringing value, and for everybody, it's different. By the way, depends on your different stages of life. You know what I'm saying? So, it could be that you've got young children. It could be that you have older children. It could be that you're an empty nester. It could be you don't have any children at all. It could be that I don't know what it is. Everyone's situation is different, but understanding, where your value comes in and really, and it doesn't mean that you can have a perfectly healthy, wonderful partner and they just may not see things the same way that you see them, but being able to communicate that fully, like, this is how I see it. I see that I'm doing this. I'm providing, love and affection. I don't mean sex, but maybe it could be whatever, and we're coming together. We have this beautiful life, and we're sharing these things, be it resources, time, energy, whatever. And this is what I believe. And so, understanding your value is so important, and then being able to stand in your power um, because of that, because of the woman that you are, right? Not because of what you're doing.
Yes.
For everyone.
That right there, that is the key to this conversation. When you can stand in the value of who you are without needing to prove it, quantify it. But when you own that, you anchor into that, you radiate that, you speak from that place, you have a boundary from that place, then the financial piece, there's no dependency, and therefore codependency in that situation.
That's right.
And you are in choice as to what are you going to do in response to this conversation around money, in response to their choices around money. And it all comes down to, if that other person has a different idea about how they want their money to be used or spent in the relationship, and you are not aligned with that, and you cannot tolerate that or accept that, then you have to go into the question of whether or not you can continue the relationship and
That's
be
right.
true to yourself.
That's right.
And versus, well, then let me go into and finagle myself and change myself and deny my boundary. And then this is where it creates the codependency. It's not that you don't ever need anything from another person. We are always going to need something from another person.
Yep.
Codependency is not just about having a physical need. We need somebody to take us to the hospital sometimes, or to pick us up, or to help us out, or whatever. And it's when you deny and sacrifice and abnegate your truth in order to be in the relationship, that's the problem. And that's the codependency that begins, rather dependency. And then if the other person responds to that, it can create codependency, because one person could be dependent and the other person is sovereign. They won't tolerate that.
That's right.
You know, it goes both ways, but being mindful about how you show up, your boundary, and getting clear on that before you have these conversations. What do you need to know? Get really specific. What documents do you need to see? Asking about the types of accounts. Are you also willing to disclose your own information? It has to be a two-way street.
That's right. That's right.
Spending your own income. And what are both of your financial priorities? What are both of your financial needs? Where do you both need to put money to have a healthy financial future? Being really clear, and then being confident as you approach the conversation, being clear as to why you're having the conversation. And instead of demanding, asking, because no matter what, they're going to show you who they are.
That's right. And it's become, it will be probably one of the most honest litmus tests that you can have.
Yeah.
For both of you too, for both of you. You know, I think, you know, it's fascinating to me, like our young adults who are getting married and whatnot, like they're keeping their own checking account. Like they have their individual accounts and then they've got what they contribute to their joint account to pay the bills. It's like a little bit of a different world. Like I was not raised like that. I don't know if you were, but that's
I was kind of right in between. I'm about to turn 45. So I was kind of right at the in between of, I heard my mom always say, I don't need a man. I can do it myself, you know, but that's not always what I witnessed. And so I had both in me. And I always, since I was a little girl, would say, I will never rely on a man financially. I will never need a man. And then I ended up in a situation one time where I had to. And there was no other way. And that was really hard, but it allowed me to do the inner work, to clear the karma, to do what I did today.
Yeah.
And to have the wider understanding of the historical root. But I think my generation is kind of in the in between. Half of us are half of us are that way. And even with young people, I still have met a lot of young women who still want to be supported financially and don't want to work.
Okay.
So I think there's a swing on both sides.
I feel like in any shift, the pendulum goes all the way and then it comes back toward the middle. So I think, and again, it goes back to the individual, what's going to work, right? What's going to work for the couple? What's going to work for the individuals involved in the couple, you know? And sometimes it just doesn't make sense for one of the partners to work because there are other things that have to get done or that need to get done or they want to have to get done or whatever. And that's really okay too. Whatever. Yeah.
So, yeah. I hope that this has been a helpful conversation for all of you, and feel free to, once this comes out, post your comments and your questions. So it's been really great to dive into this a little more, into some of the meat of how this shows up for women and how women can start to take more ownership of their financial situation and power, you know, that claiming that direct access to money, working on the worthiness piece, working on owning your value, owning your boundaries, working on speaking your truth, on releasing the unhealthy forms of dependency. And it's really the path to freedom. It really is. So any final words as we start to close out?
I think just encouragement that you can do this. Like there is a way. Some people, I think sometimes, just like you said, you give the money part so much power, and I've seen a lot of people freeze in the state of it, like not really wanting to dig in because either they're afraid they might have to make a difficult decision that they don't want to make. First of all, you don't ever have to. You get to own your decisions fully, 100%. Like even if they're not the healthiest decisions, you can choose whatever you want. regardless. So just keep that in mind. But don't be afraid. You can do this, and you may also be surprised where your partner is on things, you know. You've chosen a partner who's willing to grow and learn, and who knows, you can grow together in it, so just don't be afraid. This is something that you can maintain control. You can get it into a place where you're feeling a lot of agency in your life by doing it, by having the conversations.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. And Sara, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
Oh, yeah. You can find me. The best place is on my website, sarastansberry.com. I write a Substack. I've got some free resources there. I've got a book coming out, so check it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And you can go to thepathtosovereignty.com if you want to check out the online temple to deepen into financial sovereignty and sovereignty in general. And we'll see you next week on the Soul Sovereignty Podcast.